pizza chain. The smell of dough, the sound of children's laughter, and a man at table 12 who shouldn't have been there. But while the world was told this was a simple family dinner, the people of Woking knew the truth. They knew that what happened inside those four walls was physically impossible. Now, 5 years later, as a 66-year-old man sits slumped in the back of a police cruiser after an 11-hour interrogation, the mystery of that pizza outing has finally unraveled into something much darker. The alibi that was supposed to save him might be the very thing that finally ends him. Because if he wasn't at that restaurant that night, where was he really?
On that particular day that we now understand is the date, which is the 10th of March, I was at home. I was with the children. I'd taken Beatrice to a Pizza Express in Woking for a party at I suppose sort of 4 or 5 in the afternoon.
In the quiet town of Woking, an ordinary pizza crust became the foundation of a global scandal. But there's one detail the world missed. The people who actually lived there say the story is physically impossible. You see, the local Pizza Express isn't just a restaurant anymore. It's a site of architectural investigation for millions of internet sleuths. When Andrew claimed he was sitting at a table there on March 10th, 2001, he wasn't just offering an alibi. He was betting his entire reputation on a mundane Sunday dinner. But here is where the truth starts to fracture. Woking is the kind of place where a royal appearance doesn't just go unnoticed, it stops traffic. Locals like Barbara, who has lived there for decades, are adamant. If a member of the royal family walks into a mid-range pizza chain, the staff doesn't just hand over a menu, they call everyone they know. Yet, for nearly 20 years, there wasn't a single photograph, a single autograph, or a single corroborated witness. It gets stranger. While Andrew described the visit as a very unusual thing to do, he spoke with a precision that felt rehearsed, almost clinical. He remembered the exact date and the exact daughter he was with, yet he couldn't explain why his own security detail had no record of the trip. Then came the medical defense that turned the world's curiosity into a frenzy. He claimed a rare condition from his time in the Falklands War made it physically impossible for him to sweat. It was a bold, high-stakes gamble meant to debunk a witness's memory of a perspiring man on a dance floor. But as the headlines mocked him with phrases like, "Now he's sweating," a much darker realization was settling in back at the palace. The alibi wasn't just failing, it was being dismantled by the very people who were supposed to protect him. And while the public laughed at the memes, his own inner circle was beginning to realize that this impossible pizza night was about to trigger a chain reaction that no amount of royal influence could stop. Because while Andrew was focused on the table at the restaurant, he completely ignored the person standing right next to him, the one person whose memory of that night would eventually change everything. Woking Pizza Express didn't just become a meme, it became a digital crime scene where the evidence was hidden in plain sight, right in the Google reviews. While the world watched the 2019 interview in disbelief, a strange phenomenon was unfolding online. Thousands of people descended on the restaurant's business page, but they weren't there to talk about the food. They were leaves clues. Satirical reviews began flooding in, mocking the no-sweat policy and asking if the crust was as thin as the prince's alibi. It was a digital uprising that eventually forced TripAdvisor to lock the page entirely. But beneath the jokes, there was a haunting reality that the staff had to live with every single day. Imagine going to work at a quiet pizza shop and suddenly becoming the ground zero for a global sex trafficking investigation. Journalists began staking out the bins. Tourists started taking selfies at the window. The staff remained professional, silent, and poised. But the whispers inside the kitchen told a different story. They were living in a building that had been turned into a monument of perceived arrogance. The irony is thick. On the wall of the restaurant hangs a quote by local icon Paul Weller, stating he'd like to leave a body of work that inspires others long after he's gone. Instead, the most famous thing about this location is now a story of evasion. The locals in Woking aren't just annoyed, They're insulted. They see their town, a hub of culture and history, reduced to a punchline in a royal's desperate attempt to stay out of a London nightclub. Yet, as the satirical reviews asked, "Do you deliver to prison?" the joke started to feel like a prophecy. With the 2026 arrest, those internet trolls started to look like detectives. The restaurant had become a symbol of a man who thought he could hide in the most ordinary place on earth. But he forgot one thing. The more ordinary the setting, the more a lie begins to stand out. And while the public was busy dissecting the menu, a far more devastating betrayal was happening behind the palace gates. It wasn't the public who would deliver the final blow. It was the very person who had walked through those pizza shop doors by his side. Princess Beatrice didn't just watch her father's downfall, she unwittingly built the stage for it. Behind the polished curtains of the palace, reports suggest a daughter was left in literal pieces, realizing she had been used as a human shield on global television. Imagine the scene. A young woman, anxious and loyal, spends weeks helping her father prepare for the interview of a lifetime. She believed his innocence. She trusted his word. Then, as the cameras rolled, she watched in silent horror as he dragged her name into the mud of his woking alibi. The betrayal was immediate, and the consequences were cold. Producers present at the time described Beatrice as visibly anxious during the setup, desperately hoping for her father to be redeemed. Instead, she discovered, along with the rest of the world, that she was being cited as his proof for a night she reportedly had no memory of. The aftermath wasn't just a quiet family disagreement. It was a volcanic explosion behind closed doors. Rumors swirled of a heated exchange that left Beatrice in tears, realizing her father's desperation had permanently stained her own future. But the pain didn't stop at the palace walls. The fallout hit her where it hurt most: her dignity. In the lead-up to her wedding, the Andrew effect became a toxic cloud that no one wanted to touch. It's been whispered for years that major high-end designers, houses that would usually kill for a royal commission, suddenly found themselves too busy to work with her. Her father's reputation was so radioactive that it began to burn everyone nearby. She wasn't just a princess anymore, she was the girl from the pizza alibi. Even now, as the 2026 arrest sends fresh tremors through the monarchy, the weight on Beatrice's shoulders has only grown heavier. She is the silent victim of a narrative she helped create, forced to watch as the man she tried to save is stripped of every title and dignity he once held. But as she retreated into the shadows to protect her own young family, the king was preparing a final brutal blow. Charles wasn't just going to take Andrew's titles. He was about to take his home, and the path from a 30-room mansion to a humble cottage was about to become a very public walk of shame. While Andrew was housebound and under investigation following his February birthday arrest, he was effectively hiding out at Wood Farm, the humble retreat where his father, Prince Philip, spent his final years. But the quiet word from the palace was loud and clear: "You can't stay here." By Easter Monday, 2026, the world watched the final act of this fall from grace as Andrew moved his life into Marsh Farm, a 5-bedroom property that, while renovated with luxury carpets, sits exposed on a floodplain and just feet from a public road. The renovations at Marsh Farm tell a story of a man preparing for a long, isolated siege. High-speed satellite dishes, luxury flooring from royal warrant holders, and a massive 2-meter security fence were all rushed in to create a new, smaller fortress. But there's a detail that should chill anyone following this saga. The grounds now include a refurbished stable and a mysterious mobile home on site. Is it for storage? Or is it a private retreat for a man who can no longer show his face in the village? Even the local Chinese takeaway is now 3 miles away, a staggering distance for a man who once had the world at his fingertips. But as Andrew settles into his new life of isolation, the legal net is tightening around those who occupied his inner circle. The same 2026 investigation that saw Andrew detained for 11 hours has now expanded to include figures like Peter Mandelson, as lawmakers finally vote to release confidential documents that have been suppressed for decades. These files purportedly reveal a self-enriching hustle that goes far beyond a single night in Woking. And while Andrew gazes out from behind his new wooden fence at Marsh Farm, the question isn't whether he'll ever return to Royal Lodge. It's whether his new 5-bedroom home is just a temporary stop on the way to a much smaller, much colder room. Because while the king may have provided the house, the police are the ones who will decide how long he gets to stay there. This story isn't just about a single restaurant in Surrey anymore. It was never really just about the pizza. But that mundane outing in Woking became the perfect symbol of a much larger decay. A man who believed that if he spoke a lie with enough royal authority, the world would have no choice but to accept it as gospel. Today, the Woking Pizza Express still stands. On any given Sunday evening, you can still hear the clink of glasses and the sound of families celebrating. Life there has moved on, resilient and unchanged. But for the man who tried to use that dining room as his ultimate shield, the world has become a very small, very quiet place. As Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor sits behind the new security fences of Marsh Farm, looking out at the Norfolk floodplains, he is a man without a title, without a public role, and increasingly without an escape. The 2026 Epstein file releases have done what decades of rumors couldn't. They've turned the pizza alibi from a joke into a central pillar of a misconduct investigation that is only just beginning. With figures like Peter Mandelson now facing the same legal heat, the walls aren't just closing in on Andrew. They're closing in on an entire era of perceived immunity. Virginia Giuffre may not have lived to see this final reckoning, but her family's gratitude to the police suggests that for the victims, the truth was never about a receipt or a medical condition. It was about accountability. So we have to ask you, after seeing the evidence, do you believe the locals? Is it possible for a member of the royal family to disappear into a suburban restaurant without leaving a single trace? Or was the Woking alibi the greatest fiction ever told on national television? And more importantly, now that the king has moved him out and the police have moved in, is there any way back for the man the world once knew as a prince? The investigation into the 2026 Epstein leaks is moving fast, and as more confidential documents are declassified, the true nature of what happened, not just in Woking, but in the corridors of power, is finally coming to light. This story is far from over. To stay updated on every new development and every leaked file as they break, make sure you're subscribed. The truth is finally being served, and you won't want to miss what comes next.